You may have heard the saying, give a person a fish and you feed them for today. Teach a person to fish and you feed them for a lifetime. That's great, assuming they really like to fish. As a leadership coach, Chris Hutchinson works with leaders every day who don't want to be taught anything, yet are passionate about getting better results from their people. Today, Chris will share some thoughts to help us figure out one aspect of the abstract concept known as leadership. Help me welcome Chris with his speech, Leadership, Helping Others Figure Out How to Fish.
Thank you, John. Leadership is indeed an abstract concept. I went to the Google and looked, and I found 20,000 quotes on leadership. So rather than go through all 20,000, I thought I would pick a certain narrow flavor that I think we can apply in our own lives to take that abstract concept and make it something real. Over the last 20 years, I've been working as a leader or with leaders and have had lots of experience trying to figure out this mushy subject of leadership. And I spent the last 6 of that writing a book called Ripple, a field manual for leadership that works. It's meant both ways, leadership that does work and leadership things that work. And there's lots and lots of information. One part of it, though, out of the 6 main principles that I believe are really vital for leaders to pay attention to, the 4th one is basically saying that a leader's power is only multiplied as much as it is shared. I could have written empower your people, tell people, help people be able to do what they can do, but that's the concept. That's the principle that if a leader shares power, that it can be multiplied. And there are 4 simple practices in there, of which I'm going to share the last one. That's help others figure out how to fish. Now, I actually got feedback from my editor and people who are reading the book and said, figure out, that's kind of colloquial. What about the teach thing? And to me, there's a big difference between teaching and figuring out. I, a lot of times, teach my kids. Last night, we were working with chopsticks, and I was showing them, here's how you hold it, this is how you do it. Okay, make your hand look like mine. They're getting an echo. I'm helping them practice enough so that they can do what I can do. Helping people figure things out, actually, I think means allowing them to struggle, allowing them to wrestle with what are the important parts of that. How do you think, if I'd done it with my kids, how do you think you need to hold your hands? What do you need to do with the chopsticks? How are you going to get food to your mouth? And I believe this is more important. This is important for now, but if I teach you how to fish over here, great, that means you can fish. And the next time you need something else, you're going to come to me and say, what else can you teach me? If you help people figure things out, then they can figure out how to hunt and how to farm and how to pick berries and how to solve problems and how to have confidence in what they're doing. And I think that's a big distinction, and that real leadership is not around this part, but more this part over here. So allow me to illustrate by sharing a story, an experience I had with the company. 6 years ago, they could see a lot of growth on the horizon. They were a fairly conservative company, but demand was picking up, their reputation was really good. Unfortunately, they only had 3 main leaders in the company, the founders of the company. They had 40 or so people, but they could see themselves growing to a couple hundred, and they were worried about what was going to happen. They had frontline managers, but there was really a huge gap between the people running the company with that ownership philosophy and the folks getting the work done. So they took the top 8 leaders, or actually leaders in waiting, and said, we need to help these folks. What could you do to help them? We set up a program where they were going to get some raw, unfiltered feedback through a 360-degree evaluation based on certain behaviors. And I think it's really important. Behaviors are over here, where I can be style neutral. If this behavior works with leaders and followers, if I do that, I'm going to get better results. I could do it with a brusque manner. I could be very quiet. But it's not saying I'm this or that person. That's kind of over, I think, in this kind of, you're good enough or you're not. Versus these are behaviors everybody can learn and do. And then also we set up a program of coaching. So they would actually get support as they were wrestling with those subjects. Not to tell them what to do, but help them figure it out. The actual assessments were around the Leadership Challenge, which is a book written by Kuzes and Posner. They wrote it some time ago. It's in its 5th edition. And they've actually run 2 million people through this set of 30 behaviors based on, they have 5, there are all these numbers, right? 5 practices of leadership: modeling the way, sharing, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. And these simple behaviors, there's, you can do the math, 6 behaviors per question, per practice, sorry. And those are what this is about. And the assessment is, I say how often I think I'm displaying these behaviors, and then you'd say how often you think you see them, and my direct reports would. And so I get this feedback. I can see how am I showing up differently with different people, what am I really strong in behaviorally, and where could I change my behavior? That's hard feedback. That's I'm putting the thing out, I'm not catching a fish. So getting that information was really important for them to figure out, gee, I can get better. Then the coaching was really around, to me, asking questions. Teaching is telling. Over here, you ask. And asking effective questions. It's very easy to say, why haven't you tried that? That's not a question. That's a solution that I'm trying to see if you'll take. And a lot of us as people, it's very easy to say, well, how can you do it this way? Again, that's not a question, really. That's saying that that's a solution in disguise. It's something that you're imposing on the other person. The challenging questions are ones that make people think. I will tell you the kind of questions that a yes-no question or one that you can answer in yes-no, who's doing most of the thinking? The asker, right? Not only that, but if somebody's trying to answer that question, they'll think, well, what do you want to hear? Was it a good time? Let's see, I had about 2% good time, 98% not so good, but I can say good time, 2%, versus how much did you like that? I'm going to probably be easier to answer. And I think there's a sliding scale of questions that are going to explore people's thinking. Those yes-nos don't explore a lot of people's thinking and just can take you to a dead end. The easiest questions to ask are ones you can't get wrong. Yes-no, there's a 50-50 chance of getting it wrong, right? An easier question would be 3 choices. So, would you like to go out to dinner? Should we stay home? Or should we skip dinner entirely? Or is there something else? You cannot get that wrong. And it explores your thinking, because it's going to be maybe the first 3 are like, no. Oh, well, if it's not that, it's this. So those are the kind of questions I think that really help. It's almost that multiple choice kind of thing. Also, questions that explore thinking are how and what questions. How do you see this going? What's most important, or what is somewhat important? By the way, I challenged myself there with that, because if I say, what's the most important thing, there's a lot of ways to get that wrong. Right? Because you're going to your mental bank going, okay, that was good. I don't know if that's most. I don't know if that's most. But if you say, what are some of the things that are important? Those things that are on their mind are probably going to be the most important. But you take down that barrier and make it easy to do. Another important aspect of questions that I believe is leaving an escape hatch. I have a coach who's done this to me. He said, well, what's the most important thing? He gave me a high barrier question. What's the most important thing you need to do over the next 2 months? Oh my God, that sounds really bad. That's hard. And he can do this big sigh, and he goes, you know what? If you take 30 days to figure it out, you're going to be ahead of most people. Oh, well, that's not so bad. I can start on it now. Is there a way to get out of this room? If I feel cornered by a question, I'm probably going to do behavior I don't really like, and I might answer in a way just to get out of the way. But if there's an easy way, I can see the doors open over there, I can stay in a challenging question. I can squirm a little bit, knowing it's okay. I can get out of this. So those are the kind of questions I think that are vitally important to help people figure things out, help them explore their thinking, not necessarily yours. It's not your brilliance, it's your assistance to help them be brilliant. There's a quote by Ralph Nader that says, the product of leadership is not growing more followers, but growing more leaders. And I think these kind of questions and the way of helping people figure things out will help you do that. Oh, back to the story. So this week, actually, I met with the CEO. I just happened to bump into her at a holiday party. And I said, hey, how are things going? I see continued expansion. It's even greater than we'd anticipated 6 years ago. And she said, I need to tell you something, Chris, that those 8 people originally, now 4 have left the company because they just got other opportunities, but there are 4 people who have risen fully into that leadership thing. And we had a discussion today about the next level of leaders that we need to promote and encourage, because we're getting into the pyramids growing up higher. And they talked about the experience they had with you, with those assessments that were a little hard to take, and the questions that were very challenging, and the coaching support that you did over the 6 months, and how vital that was. And they were right on the edge of saying, we need to call Chris back. And then they said, we think we can do it ourselves. We can do this. We've been through this. We know how to do this in a way to help people struggle, but be supported, and at the same time, understand what they're really going to do. We may need to get those assessments, because those are nice, but we can do this. And I looked at her, and I was thinking, I was pretty proud. I said, you must feel great about that. She goes, I am so thrilled to see people take that responsibility, not only for the company, but for growing more leaders. So really, I think, let's catch up on my notes. So the call to action that I have is really to think about growing yourself and others. Look for that feedback that's going to help you figure things out, raw as it might be. Ask questions of yourself and others to figure out what's most important in an issue and work through that. And if you are successful, I believe you'll follow this quote by Lao Tzu, where he says, "A leader is best when his work is done, his aim fulfilled, and people will say, we did it ourselves." Mr. Toastmaster.